You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Good Thursday morning and welcome in to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It is the Morning Boys with your host, Ryan Hickey. Thank you so much for tuning in as we near closer to an end week. But more importantly, we finally near closer. We have reached the day where some sort of live sporting event is here and it's happening. It is the NFL draft that will be starting tonight and taking place over the next 3 days. We have finally made it, sports fans, to at least something we can kind of sink our teeth into, watch something where we don't know the outcome of, be surprised by, and at least for one night, or I should say really for 3 nights, have some normality return to our lives and kind of get back to our normal television viewing habits of watching live sports at night and just kind of getting swept into the moment and swept into whatever is going on. So thank you again, NFL. We've talked about this really since the shutdown of sports happened. The NFL draft is not necessary, shutting down during this scary time, and thankfully, at least, it is going on. So we have some sort of entertainment to talk about, and some sort of entertainment to watch. So very excited for the NFL draft. We'll have wall-to-wall, ton of NFL draft coverage coming your way over the next 2 hours until 11 a.m. on the East Coast. We have a lot of NFL news. We have obviously Rob Gronkowski coming out of retirement, not only coming out of retirement, getting traded from the Patriots to the Buccaneers, teaming up with Tom Brady. We'll discuss that. If you look at the odds, if you look at, what some prognosticators are saying and discussing, you think the Buccaneers, are now the greatest team since the greatest show on turf or the Patriots dynasty is last 20 years. Maybe we should just pump the brakes a little bit on the Buccaneers' hopes and Super Bowl hopes so far. We'll discuss that in just about 20 minutes. Finally, it's going to be wall-to-wall NFL coverage for sure. But MLB yesterday did, perfect timing-wise, throw out a news dump that was the Red Sox punishment, which ended up really being nothing. It's actually interesting that a lot of Red Sox players, whether it's Joe Kelly or others, were very outspoken in the last few weeks, talking about how the investigation really is not going to find anything. Good luck to Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, and actually finding the Red Sox guilty of committing a crime. They did. Rob Manfred found them guilty of something, but essentially the only punishment was a replay room operator losing his job for at least 1 year, possibly 2, maybe even his career. And Alex Cora, the former manager of the Red Sox before he was fired, being suspended for the 2020 season, but nothing because of what he did to the Red Sox. We'll get into that. And more importantly, now that all the punishments between the Astros and the Red Sox are handed out, how can MLB prevent cheating from going forward? We'll discuss. I have a plan on how to make sure this doesn't happen again. We still have our NFL draft needs to get to. We are wrapping that up. We have the last 2 teams of the Buccaneers and Panthers in the NFC South, and we'll hit all 4 NFC West teams. And then also we'll continue another realistic or reach NFL draft rumors segment. We have a nice rumor yesterday coming out that the Dolphins are thinking of trading up to number 3 with the Lions. We'll discuss that. We'll do some predictions because if you heard in this show, I've said over the last few weeks, the Dolphins should not take Tua Tagovailoa at number 3, at number 5, wherever they are. I think their offensive line is not great. The talent around him won't be enough to protect him from getting hurt with it already being, a guy being already injury prone as it is. So if the Dolphins don't take him, if the Chargers don't take him, how far could Tua actually end up dropping? We'll discuss that as well. And excited to have a coworker of mine at CBS Sports Radio, but also an entrepreneur himself, the producer, creator of TDScouting.com. That's Tom DiBendetto. Will join us at the end of the show at 10:40, a draft guru, a draft analyst, and he will kind of discuss, basically flush it out for all of us, right? We hear in terms of tackle-wise, there's 4 big tackles that are kind of grouped together. You can, each team has their order. But no one really talks about the drop-off between those 4 and the rest. So we'll discuss that because other teams besides 4 need a tackle. So what is the significant drop-off between these 4 and the rest? We'll discuss quarterbacks. Is he worried about Tua Tagovailoa's health history? We'll get to all that with Tom, and again, about 10:40 to wrap up the show of TDScouting.com. As always, you want to get involved in the show, social media is the best way to do so. We're on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Type that in there. First of all, throw us a like because then you'll get a notification every time a show that I do goes live, every time a show Errol Marks does at night, which is, I believe, at least 4 or 5 times a week. So a lot of content for him that's being produced every time a show goes live. And he has a great draft show planned for tonight. So if you are in the mood to watch a draft, but you don't really like the production that ESPN is going to do, or you don't really like some of the analysts that are on the show, I highly, highly suggest you tune in tonight, starting at 7 o'clock with Errol's draft, not only preview show, but also carrying you through the draft. He'll have Brandon Jacobs on the show, Eric Coleman on the show, so Jets and Giants legends coming on as well, and he'll be breaking down every single pick from the first round of the draft tonight. So again, that'll be 7 o'clock right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, and now you can find it easy. Go to Facebook, throw us a like there, you get a notification when the show is live, and also find all of our written content as well. We're also on Twitter, WWSRN_radio. It's WWSRN_radio. You can tweet us there or drop a comment on Facebook as well. Who do you want your team to select? You know, a lot of draft stuff we will get into as well. But I do want to start the show with going back a few days to the news that Rob Gronkowski is unretiring, coming back to football, but not playing for the Patriots. He was under contract when he retired, so if he was to return, they have to be with the Patriots, or the Patriots have to grant him a trade, which they did. They traded him down to be with his buddy Tom Brady down there in Tampa. And it's interesting because a lot of the reaction, there's two things, and I want to get into both. The second thing I want to get into is what we kind of teased out before, about how the Buccaneers now should be Super Bowl favorites, or at least be the leaders in the NFC. And betting-wise, they are. So discuss why we should pump the brakes on that. But the other narrative or thought process I find interesting was that, you know, people were starting to question Bill Belichick, maybe not even question, just start to declare this is the end of the Patriots. This is, now you start to see players wanting out, getting tired of Bill Belichick. Has his run basically come to an end? Has he run out of time? Every great coach sort of has their ending. Maybe the message is getting stale, and for the most part now you see, whether it's Tom Brady and now Rob Gronkowski, players don't want to play with him, and winning now doesn't mask all of the grueling grind that goes into playing with the Patriots and under Bill Belichick. And there's a lot of comparisons out there to Jerry Krause, which if you saw The Last Dance last Sunday night, Jerry Krause was the general manager of the Bulls during the 90s, and he was the one who essentially broke up the Bulls, maybe too early, maybe too, not early enough, but essentially, Jerry Krause got a lot of blame for the Bulls maybe not winning more or being the reason, Michael retired for those 18 months, and just got a lot of blame in general for maybe not capitalizing on what the Bulls had talent-wise and making life tough for everyone in that organization. And to me, I look at this trade, I look at Tom Brady leaving. For me, and this is a neutral observer as a Colts fan, I'm not a Patriots fan at all and would benefit like the 31 other teams would if the Patriots decline and just go into a spiral of 20 years of hell that most of us have witnessed one way or another rooting for our teams in the NFL. The future for me in New England is brighter. It is not bleaker. After Tom Brady leaving, after Gronk being traded, after basically this offseason where it's been only mostly negative attention towards the Patriots, I think their future is a lot brighter, to be honest, and here's why. So like you said, there was a sort of a mass exodus in New England this offseason. You had Tom Brady going to Tampa, Rob Gronkowski unretiring, getting traded to Tampa. You had a core guy like Nate Ebner on special teams, which is a guy basically the Patriots live and die on. These are the kind of guys that the Patriots way is founded upon. He's gone. Jamie Collins is gone. Kyle Van Noy is gone. But there's no need to panic because guess what? The Patriot way and the Patriots were not really built by one man, and they sure as hell won't be taken down by one man. And if you look at this offseason, at least, this is business as usual for the Patriots. I think about it. Bill Belichick's entire mindset, and part of the reason why he's been so successful for 2 decades, is that he'd rather cut a guy a year too early, right, where maybe he still had some time left on talent-wise or he still wasn't at his peak, than rather hold on to a guy a year or two too late and then have the decline happen or pay him too much money to where you can't get rid of him and have to play a guy that's not performing at his best. And we've seen this time and time again, whether it's trading Richard Seymour to the Raiders. He let Adam Vinatieri, think about this, he let Adam Vinatieri, who kicked 2 game-winning field goals in the Super Bowl to win the game, let him walk as a free agent. He spent more time as a Colt than as a Patriot, despite the fact that all his big kicks, we remember of Adam Vinatieri, came with the Patriots early on in his career. He walked as a free agent. They didn't re-sign Wes Welker when they had the chance to, and Wes Welker was maybe the hardest person to guard in all the NFL when him and Tom Brady linked up. They traded Logan Mankins to the Buccaneers while Logan Mankins was still at the prime of his career. They traded Chandler Jones to the Cardinals, and he's only gotten better. Chandler Jones had 19 sacks last year for the Cardinals. And the Patriots traded him back in 2016 when he was still very young and still developing and growing because they didn't want to pay him. So there's a trend here. Bill Belichick would rather get rid of you a year too early than a year too late. And all this happened in the offseason was Bill Belichick stayed business as usual. He got rid of Tom Brady. He didn't want to give Tom Brady $30 million or even more as a 50-year-old as a 43-year-old quarterback, right? He traded Gronkowski for a fourth-round pick who's retired and was never going to play for the Patriots again. There should be concern about the Patriot way if this was the opposite. If Bill Belichick catered to what Rob Gronkowski wanted. If he gave Tom Brady the $30+ million a year that he wanted. This is business as usual for the Patriots, and this is why and how they have stayed relevant and successful for 2 decades. Because they see a plan, they don't want to overpay guys, they don't want to get stuck salary cap-wise, and they continue to move on and reload. And part of how they reload in the draft. You look at 2020 draft, Bill Belichick now, after this Rob Gronkowski trade, has 13 draft picks. 13. He has a ton of ammo to improve the front 7 and the offensive line. The secondary is great. Obviously, he needs some weapons on the outside as well, but the offensive line needs improvement. Offense needs improvement, and the front 7 especially needs improvement. And if there's a guy that I trust that needs to rebuild some position groups significantly and build them through the draft, Bill Belichick's still that guy for me. I still trust him. I still trust what he wants, and there's no guy I'd rather have finding some hidden gems in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round than Bill Belichick. And now he has 13 cracks at it at least to try to get some impact players for the next few years. And finally, this is why at least I think the future is bright and not bleak if you're a Patriots fan in New England. Cap relief is on the horizon. This year, they are strapped. And if Tom Brady stayed, they'd even be in more trouble. But him leaving at least frees, at least doesn't have them over the barrel for $30 million a year. They have the least amount of cap space of all 32 teams entering the draft. I think it's just over $1 million to have right now. So they really can't even sign their full draft class worth of guys right now if they drafted all 13 players. But here's what's a positive sign. Next year, 2021, that number explodes over $100 million. They have one of the most, or they have some of the most cap space in all the NFL. So this year, they are extremely tight. The least amount of cap space in 2020. Next year, 2021, over $100 million in cap space. So, yeah, this year will probably be a reloading year for sure. I think that they'll take a step back. I think it's only natural. You move on from, the all-time greatest quarterback, despite his age. You have, again, when you don't have a lot of wiggle room cap-wise and you're relying on a lot of young players, especially in a Belichick system defensively, it's tough. I think the Bills are primed to win the division this year. And who knows with Jarrett Stidham? We don't know what he has. This for sure could be a rebuilding year. This could be an 8-8 kind of year. But let's not, kid ourselves. Going forward, you look at the future. It's still very bright and very promising. Cap space, draft picks, Bill Belichick has it all. And he is continuing to do business as usual. Despite panic being coming down, this is what Bill Belichick does. He doesn't pay older players. He doesn't cater to what their needs are. He prefers cheap young talent than experienced veteran talent that maybe is better than a young player, but doesn't want to pay the salary cap, doesn't want to be strapped down by that cap space. This is business as usual for the Patriots. And that's why I think their future definitely is bright, not bleak. Now, the one question mark I'll say is that especially drafting offensive weapons, whether it's tight end, whether it's receiver, Bill Belichick has struggled. Outside of Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, it's been tough. He hasn't been able to find a Gronk replacement. Maybe you could even blame the Patriots for maybe believing that Gronk was going to come back next year, and that's why they didn't address it seriously. But they absolutely need help at the tight end this year. They need some receivers because, as you saw, Tom Brady, for most of his career, outside of, let's say, Randy Moss and Deion Branch, hasn't really thrown to many promising wide receivers, or many proven wide receivers, I should say. Most of the time, it's been the other way around. He's made them, not them make him, right? He's made Wes Welker a big threat. He helped make Julian Edelman one of the hardest guys in the league to cover. He made Chris Hogan a great receiver that, again, a lot of teams had trouble covering and got a nice deal from the Panthers in free agency last year. So that's been an area of concern that really Bill Belichick needs to improve and hit upon, whether it's this draft or next draft, because that's going to be key in helping the Patriots reload, get some weapons for whether it's Jarrett Stidham this year or if they draft a quarterback this year or trade for someone next year. They're going to need some weapons for sure. They can't just rely on what they did with Tom Brady and hope the quarterback makes those positions better. But I'll say this. I trust Bill Belichick. 13 draft picks this year. I think he will crush it and hit it out of the park, especially in a time where there's less in terms of number-wise that we see, whether it's the combine, whether it's the 40-yard dash, whether it's pro days, right? There's obviously some players didn't participate in the combine, didn't have a pro day, so there's a lot of unknown, scouting-wise and numbers-wise, this offseason that a lot of teams weren't able to get. I trust Bill Belichick, when information is limited, to really take advantage and find a lot of diamonds in the rough that maybe some coaches and players either aren't seeing or aren't trusting are going to be good enough. So I absolutely think that even if this year's a speed bump, but they take a step back, miss the playoffs, go 8-8, something like that, I think they are reloading to where 2021, 2022, 2023, still very promising, and things are looking bright, not bleak in New England. So let's get your thoughts. Is the end near for the Patriots, as we know, right? I mean, obviously, we can try to dance on their grave, try to point to Tom Brady leaving, Rob Gronkowski now wanting to play with Bill Belichick, having Jarrett Stidham as quarterback. Is the end near New England, or do you believe that Bill Belichick is reloading for another run of success? I believe he's reloading, and I think the Patriots, again, maybe not this year, but next year, 2 years from now, will be right back in the mix where they have been for the last 2 decades. So I think definitely the future in New England is very bright, not bleak, and that only got stronger this offseason. So let's get your thoughts. Patriots, are they done? Is the dynasty over? And is Bill Belichick now kind of toiling and going down, or is he just getting ready to reload and get ready for another 2-decade run of success? So we'll get into that. We'll get to your thoughts. I'd love to either on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, or on Twitter, WWSRN_radio. So we'll get your thoughts when we come back. And also when we come back, so speaking of the Gronk trade, right, this is really the trade that kind of spurred this questioning of Bill Belichick, let's say, which I think is just silly. But now let's look on the other side. The Buccaneers, right, they get Rob Gronkowski. They have Tom Brady. They have Mike Evans. They have Chris Godwin. You know, things are starting to shape up there in Tampa Bay. Are they a Super Bowl contender? We'll tell you next. It is the Ryan Hickey Show, or I should say, it is the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
And welcome back into the Morning Boys right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Hope everyone has a great Thursday. Staying safe, staying sane out there for sure as we conclude or get close to at least another weekend or week in the books. But thankfully, at least for sports fans, we have some sort of event to look forward to, something to watch that's live and unpredictable. And that unpredictable is definitely a word to describe the NFL draft, that's for sure. As you see tons of rumors flying out, trying to disseminate what's true, what's real, what's fake. We'll kind of discuss that again. We have a segment we'll get to about 10 o'clock here. Realistic or reach, a lot of draft rumors being thrown out. Now, apparently, you see the Dolphins are one that are trying to trade up to number 3, maybe to take a tackle. And not only trade up to number 3, keep their number 5 pick. We'll discuss that, again, just about 10 o'clock. And we start at least the show with talking about the Patriots. Unfortunately, again, it hurts to say this because I am in lockstep with 31 other NFL fans out there, that the NFL is a better place when the Patriots aren't good, and would love to see the downfall of Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, and that Patriots franchise kind of just go into what us as the other 31 fans have probably felt at one point or another watching our teams. 2 decades of success is not a normality in the NFL, especially, let alone in just sports. So I'd love to see them struggle for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I just don't see it happening because they have so much going for them in the future that I think, they will definitely have a better shot at least rebuilding, whether this year could be a speed bump or not, and then get back in 2021 with all the cap space, all the draft picks they have. I trust Bill Belichick to get that ship steered in the right direction, and they'll be back sooner rather than later. So if you think the Patriots dynasty is over, if you think New England and Bill Belichick's run of success has come to an end, I'd love to get your thoughts again, either on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, or on Twitter, WWSRN_radio. Either tweet us or drop a comment on the Periscope live feed. We'll read that as well. But I want to kind of also discuss from the Buccaneers angle, right? Because they also were the one who benefited from this Rob Gronkowski trade. And now you see a lot of hype, a lot of attention, a lot of money is getting backed by Tampa Bay to make a Super Bowl run. And now the question is, are they Super Bowl favorites? They have Tom Brady, who I still think has a lot of game left. I really do. I thought last year was more of a lack of offensive line protection and not being on the same page as receivers. So I think Tom Brady still has a lot left in the tank and will be a benefit for the Buccaneers. Rob Gronkowski now, he's obviously a reliable tight end. He has a familiarity now in Tampa Bay. He has one of the best wide receiver duos in all of the league with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. So now you look, the Buccaneers are looking pretty good here. Right, they are looking like a legitimate team, and they're more importantly they're going all in. These Gronk trade signals, they are trying to do whatever they can these next 2 years to win a Super Bowl. And at least the Vegas odds are starting to back that. Because now after the Gronk trade, Tampa Bay is tied for the third best Super Bowl odds, right? It's Chiefs 1, Ravens 2, and then they are tied with San Francisco for the third best odds at 9-1. And obviously with those two teams, the Chiefs and the Ravens, in the AFC, that means the 49ers are tied for the best odds in the NFC to reach the Super Bowl again at 9-1. You have the Saints in their own division at 12-1. And even before this Gronk trade, Tampa Bay was 16-1 to win the Super Bowl. So obviously now their odds almost doubled with this Gronk trade. And this is why I think it's time to pump the brakes, at least right now, and at least to have the Buccaneers as Super Bowl favorites. I think they'll make the playoffs. I think they'll be a tough out for sure. But I'm not quite ready yet to put them as Super Bowl favorites. I'm not ready to put them at the top of a very, very crowded NFC. And it's one of the first reasons why I don't think that they should be a Super Bowl favorite right now. They shouldn't even really be a favorite in their own division. Look at the NFC South. The Saints had a 13-3 year. Had a very solid offseason coming off that 13-3 year. They didn't lose many impact players, and if they did, they already replaced those players. You lost Von Bell as a safety in free agency. You signed Malcolm Jenkins. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders coming off the Super Bowl run for the 49ers as a secondary weapon to Michael Thomas. I think they'll draft a receiver for sure. So now you can have improved and better weapons for Drew Brees, which I think is very important because I do think the last 2 years, we saw it especially 2 years ago, and last year with the thumb injury I think helped Drew a little bit, but towards the end you kind of see he ran out of steam. And Drew Brees being 41 years old, I think it's tough for him to maintain a full 16-game schedule at his peak and then also carry that into the playoffs. I think he's run out of steam. Last year, the Saints, the team around him, couldn't pick him up as they lose to the Vikings in the first round. I think it's very important for them to surround him with weapons outside of Michael Thomas and outside of Alvin Kamara to make it easier for Drew to at least lessen the burden on him. And not to mention, I'm not putting the Falcons above the Buccaneers. I'm not. I think the Saints and the Bucs are very close. I still give the nod to the Saints in the NFC South. But I think the Buccaneers are really significantly closed the gap. So I don't think the Falcons have even really a shot in hell to win the division. But this is what I'll say about the Falcons. They are trying to win, and they need to win this year. Dan Quinn, Thomas Dimitroff, head coach and general manager, are both on the hot seat. They need to basically make the playoffs this year or they're out. It's honestly kind of surprising that they even were allowed to come back this year. But they go sign Todd Gurley. You hear about them trading up. Maybe they got a cornerback to try to address a significant need in the draft. They're trying to win. They're going all in. So I'm not saying that the Falcons are going to win the division or maybe even be in the running for the division. But they're not a rollover team. They're not a guaranteed 2 wins on the schedule for the Buccaneers. This is going to be tough. This is going to be a tough division. Because I think even the Panthers are a scrappy team. Now you have a new regime coming in, starting really from the owner down. I don't think that the Panthers are going to tank their way to go 2-14 or 1-15. I think, bringing in Teddy Bridgewater, maybe they trade down, maybe get the best available player. If it's Isaiah Simmons, where they sit at number 7, it would be interesting. But I think that at least Panthers have, maybe like last year with the Cardinals, an ability to be a scrappy team. Not an easy out. You saw in the NFC West, it was very tough last year, and despite the Cardinals finishing last, they were no rollover team. They pushed both times the 49ers to the brink. They lost both games, but they pushed them tough both times. I think the Falcons could be, I think the Panthers could be that team this year, where there's not much talent there, but they're a scrappy bunch, they're still competent, and again, they're not a rollover 2 guaranteed win team for the Buccaneers. So which means the Falcons are trying to win. They'll be a tough out. The Saints, again, are 13-3 and only improved this offseason. The NFC South is going to be tough. So I think it's tough to put the Buccaneers at the top of the NFC when the NFC South is not even a lock, and I wouldn't even have them as the favorite in their own division. But Vegas, again, has them tied with the 49ers to be the best bet coming out of the NFC. Speaking of the NFC as a whole, it's a very deep conference. It's a very deep conference. Look at the AFC. It's very top-heavy. You have the Chiefs, who are great. Obviously, the Patriots now took a step down, but I would say it's the Chiefs and the Ravens at the top. And there's a significant drop-off between the Texans, you have the Titans, who made a nice run last year and are rebuilding, between the Bills, who are poised to make a run now. Even between the Steelers, to me, there's a significant gap between the Ravens, the Chiefs, and everyone else in the AFC. NFC is not the case. You have 4, 5, 6 teams that could be bubbled up there at the top, and depending on the year, could win the AFC or get the first seed in the NFC. I mean, you have the 49ers, who traded away DeForest Buckner, but still have a young, hungry defense. And I think their offense will only get better with Jimmy G in year 2, fully healthy. Maybe get a wide receiver or 2 in the draft and give him some better weapons. But I think year 2, with Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan will get better. You have the Seahawks, who Week 17 last year, despite the injuries, still had a chance at home to win and beat the 49ers and get the number 1 seed in the NFC. They are still a legitimate foe, and they're only improving. Even if they don't sign Jadeveon Clowney, they are still a very, very tough out. Russell Wilson's playing some of the best football of his career. So they're still reloading, and they're ready to make another run at it. The Packers and Vikings both need help with wide receiver, but for the most part, they're solid everywhere else. And I think, again, year 2 with Aaron Rodgers, I think that offense will improve because it was stagnant last year. I think there'll be a little more familiarity and comfortability. So I think the Packers, both and Vikings, are ready to reload for another postseason run. I mean, you have the Eagles, who have a great roster if they're healthy. They had Darius Slay, who they really need help in the secondary. They're going to draft a receiver at some point where they move up or draft someone at 21. They're going to get a skill guy to really help Carson Wentz and be that number 1 weapon. They could stay healthy, which obviously is the big question these last 2 years, and they weren't able to do it. They're a very dangerous team. Cowboys have some new life with Mike McCarthy as the head coach and offensive coordinator, and that will bring some new life to a team that still has a lot of weapons, especially on the offensive side. And again, so the Buccaneers, I think, will make the playoffs. But the road to the Super Bowl is very difficult, and those teams are just, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams are legitimately standing in the way of the Buccaneers from making a Super Bowl run. And not to mention this year, too, with the new playoff format, you have 7 teams, right? But only the top team in each conference gets a bye. And what do we know with Tom Brady and the Patriots? Year in and year out for 20 years, they're used to getting home playoff games, and worst case scenario, if they don't get the bye, at least have playoff, at least 1 or 2 home playoff games. This past year, they didn't have either. They had a bye, and then they lost at home in the first round to the Titans. So Tom Brady's benefited throughout his career of playing a lot of games at home and having a break in the playoffs. I don't think that will happen this year. I don't see the Bucs being the top team in the NFC, which means that they're going to have at least 1 playoff game to play during wildcard weekend. And not to mention, too, I don't even think they'll win the division. They're probably going to have to play all 3 of their games on the road. It's a tough, tough ask for the Buccaneers to kind of make a run, at least right now, at least to be favorites. Not saying they can't do it. I just wouldn't put them as the top and one of the teams that I'm banking on for sure to make it to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. And the last thing I'm concerned about, too, is this lack of an offseason hurts the Buccaneers more than most teams. As you saw Tom Brady. What is Tom Brady? How does he benefit the most? Or where's he most comfortable on an offense? It's when he has good rapport and he's on the same page with his receivers. Right? Tom Brady likes to read what the defense is doing and have a lot of receivers adjust their routes based upon what coverage they're playing. Where if a corner is playing outside, the receiver on inside, they both will read that at the same time and make that throw timing-wise. Well, that's not what Bruce Arians' offense is about. Bruce Arians' offense is about throwing the ball deep and throwing it deep often. So now he's going into a new offense, which I'm sure, again, will blend Tom Brady's comfortability and familiarity. They'll be blended with Bruce Arians' offense. So it's not going to be Tom Brady adjusting to a new offense. It's really going to be Bruce Arians adjusting to Tom Brady. But still, you have to build a rapport there. You have to build some trust there. You have to work on it on the field. Not to mention, outside of Gronkowski, it's all new weapons. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, whether they get, they add another receiver in the draft or they add another running back in the draft, it's all going to take familiarity to learn. And right now, this lack of an offseason is really hurting Tom Brady in that sense. And again, at least not creating the continuity that we're used to seeing between him and his receivers. So I think that's going to be tough. And not to mention the schedule is tough. Listen to the schedule. They have the Packers, the Chiefs, the Vikings, the Chargers, the Rams, and the Saints all at home. They have obviously the Saints on the road as well and the Bears on the road. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams that should be in the playoff race. I mean, they don't make it, but in the playoff hunt that they have on their schedule, almost half their schedule, over half their schedule is against playoff caliber teams. That's tough. That is very tough. So like I said, I think the Buccaneers will make the playoffs. I think they'll be, in the dance. But to put them as Super Bowl favorites, to put them tied for the best NFC odds, I would not put my money there for sure. I think the NFC is just too tough. And once you get to the playoffs, it's absolutely a gauntlet. And I just don't see, unfortunately, if you're a Buccaneers fan at least, that they make a run to the Super Bowl this year. More importantly, I would not bet them or put them as one of the favorites to make the Super Bowl out of the NFC. So I'll have to get your thoughts. Is it time? Should we crown the Buccaneers the top team in the NFC? Or are there legitimate concerns that, maybe you're not putting your money? Obviously we don't, if you're a fan who likes to bet, there's not much to bet on right now. So maybe if you're a big futures fan, you like to see, what kind of value can I get? Buccaneers at 9-1. Do you like that value? Would you put money on the Buccaneers going to the Super Bowl right now on April 23rd? I would not. I absolutely would not. Love to get your thoughts on whether you would or not, either on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network on Facebook, Twitter, WWSRN_radio. So we'll get that. We'll get your draft thoughts. And when we come back, we'll squeeze in a little bit of baseball here because MLB yesterday did hand down punishment for the Red Sox. Not as severe as you would think. Really, there's barely any punishment for the Red Sox. So we'll discuss that. And more importantly, now that the punishments are handed out and basically MLB can try their best to move on from all this cheating scandals that happened in 2017, 2018, how can we prevent it from going forward? 'Cause that's really the big question mark. How can we make sure cheating like this doesn't happen again? We'll discuss a way that MLB can implement to prevent it from going forward. We'll discuss all that when the Morning Boys of Ryan Hickey return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. A ton of draft to get to. Love to get your thoughts again. We talked a lot about the Patriots and the Buccaneers, both obviously the Rob Gronkowski trade from both sides. Patriots are still very much alive going forward and still in contention for a while. Buccaneers, they're very good. Don't get me wrong. I think they are a very good team. They'll have a lot of success this year. I just wouldn't go ahead right away on April 23rd and put them as the leading favorite to go to the Super Bowl from the NFC like Vegas has, tied with the 49ers at 9-1 odds. I'm not totally sold on it yet. Again, I think there's a lot of mitigating factors currently right now that are holding them back personally. But hey, I mean, that doesn't stop you from liking them. That doesn't stop you from putting money down. So let's get your thoughts. Are you buying into the Buccaneers right now? Super Bowl or bust for Tampa Bay in 2020? And will they be the first team ever to host a Super Bowl in their home stadium? Again, either on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, for a comment on there. Twitter, WWSRN_radio. We'll get your comments. And speaking of the NFL draft, again, whether you're a Giants fan, Jets fan, any team that you're out there, Dolphins fan, look at your thoughts on who you want your team to select tonight. Speaking of that, we have a ton of wide receivers and a lot of wide receiver draft, or in this draft, I should say, a lot of wide receivers that are great, that could go, be game changers. That's in the first round, second, third, fourth round. It's a really deep draft. Joseph Pidell writes, "What's up, Joe?" on Twitter, or I should say on Facebook, NFL draft wide receiver rankings, number 1, Ryan Hickey. I don't argue with him. I do not argue with him for sure. He's definitely right. Put me on the top above CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. I'm not faster than any of them. I'm not taller than any of them. I don't have better hands than any of them. I'm less athletic than all of them. But hey, I still got it. So if you're an NFL GM out there and need a receiver, especially a sleeper, maybe I'll throw my name out there. And one day when it gets a little bit, because we do have a lot to get to today, but there is a funny story out there from my days as a Penn Stater trying out for the football team my freshman year. Let's just say it did not go well, and let's just say I think it's safe to assume Bill O'Brien will not forget that tryout, and it was all for the worst. So on a slow day, I mean, there's going to be a lot of slow days in the next few weeks. I'll tell you that story because it is it's embarrassing for sure to say the least, but it's unforgettable. We'll say that. I said that for a rainy day, but I do like Joe Pidell's wide receiver rankings, Ryan Hickey at number 1. No argument from me. So again, if you have any thoughts on NFL draft, we'll get into a lot of it. And more importantly, an hour from now, we'll have Tom DiBendetto, a coworker of mine, great guy at CBS Sports Radio, but also the creator of TDScouting.com. He is a huge draft analyst, breakdown, especially quarterbacks, but he has his big board out, he has his mock draft out, he's everything on his website. Again, TDScouting.com to get you set for the NFL draft. We'll have him on just about an hour to end the show, get his thoughts on the tackle class, which wide receiver should go number 1. If Tua, this is an interesting question because I think no one really has an answer, and I'm interested to see what happens. If Tua doesn't go to the Dolphins and he doesn't go to the Chargers at number 6, there could be a steep decline for how far Tua could actually fall. I don't think he'll get out of the first round, but it's interesting to see there's not exactly a landing spot that you can guarantee that he will land at. So I think it's interesting and get at least Tom's thoughts on where could Tua, if he does fall, if he doesn't go in the top 6, let's say, where could he actually end up going? We'll get his thoughts again just about an hour from now at 10:40 or so. Not of TDScouting.com to get his thoughts and get your prepped for the NFL draft. But I do want to squeeze in a baseball note here before on top of the hour because I think it is important. I think it's, at least for baseball-wise, important to get this out there. And that's finally Rob Manfred issued his punishment for the Red Sox. Obviously, we know, and most of the offseason around Major League Baseball has been surrounded by the Astros and their punishment, which was obviously having their general manager and manager suspended for a year. And then they were subsequently fired, a loss of a few draft picks and a fine. I thought personally that the Astros punishment was enough. It got to a point early on where Rob Manfred, it was basically he had two options: either interview players, not guarantee immunity, which means that players will get punished for the testimony they give, basically not get a straight answer from any of them because they don't want to incriminate themselves, and we'll never really know truly what went on. We'll never know how the device was created, how their system worked, and basically there could be a slap on the wrist because Rob Manfred will never get accurate testimony as to what happened. And the other option was to grant immunity, which he did, got the full story. I think now it's more important for MLB to understand how this happened, the motivation that happened, and how technology was used against Major League Baseball in order to help the Astros cheat. So with immunity granted, players weren't going to get in trouble. I agree with that because I think it's more important for the future of the game, not just currently, but for the future of the game, to understand how cheating is going on and to try to get ahead of it as much as possible. To where now, at least going forward, I think Rob Manfred can implement a system, a punishment system, to where players will be held accountable. I think you got to get a baseline, got to figure out how it works, and from there, I think you can start to schedule out and put suspensions in place going forward, which I totally agree with. I think that's what will happen. So the second shoe to drop was the Red Sox, because right when the Astros scandal was going on, the investigation was going on, there was a report that came out that the Red Sox in 2018, led by Alex Cora, who's the man in 2017 who devised the Astros cheating scandal, came to the Red Sox in 2018. Well, they were cheating different ways. They used their video room a little bit differently. There was no trash can banging per se, but they were basically decoding signs in the video room and passing it along like a game of telephone. You know, one of the guys in the video room tells a coach tells a player, the player then tells whoever's on second base, hey, listen, the third sign is the one, and they can kind of decode it from there. So it's a little bit, harder of a system, again, especially when you're playing telephone. As we know, we all played that game. It's the messages could get a little mixed, but for the most part, that's how they're operating. It's by a game of telephone and passing, the third sign is the real sign going forward, and they only use it when players were at second base, where the Astros, as we know, used it anytime they decoded it. No one on, runners on, anytime that they could bang a trash can and figure out that they were going to do it. So a little bit less egregious, let's say. But either way, punishment had to come out, and that was not much. MLB yesterday announced that only replay room operator, his name is JT Watkins, which Rob Manfred basically figured out through all this interviews and testimony that he was the main man that acted on all this. He was the one who was decoding signs during the game and passing it along. But he also came to the conclusion that basically JT Watkins acted on his own. He wasn't guided by Alex Cora or someone in the front office of the Red Sox to do this. Players weren't encouraging him to do it. He basically, how it's painted by the commissioner, is that this guy, JT Watkins, sitting in the replay room, took it upon his own intuition to code signs during the game and pass it along to players. And apparently, coaches, front office were unaware of this going on, and somehow the players were unaware. Rob Manfred said that there was really no way for them to know whether the decoding signs that were being passed out were stuff that he was allowed to figure out before the game, which is legal, or during the game. I have a tough time believing that, but either way, so their replay room operator is suspended for the rest of the 2020 season and 2020 playoffs, if that happens. And 2021, he's allowed to return, but he's not allowed to work in the replay room. And on top of that, Alex Cora banned for the 2020 season. But that's also interesting because that stems back to his time as the Astros. He's not banned for at all anything he did with the Red Sox. It is strictly because he was really the ringleader back in 2017 with Houston. And for that, now they wanted to wait to see what his involvement was in 2018 to see if a heavier punishment had to be levied. Rob Manfred did not find that Alex Cora did anything wrong in 2017, or I should say, 2018. And that's why he's banned for the 2020 season, but only from what he did with 2017, nothing in 2018. And the Red Sox was a second-round pick. So they lose a draft pick. Alex Cora is banned, and he was already fired, but he's now banned for the rest of the year. And they lose basically a replay room operator for a full season. So there's at least, I have a few questions for this for sure, because I don't really understand how Rob Manfred could think that Alex Cora back in 2017 was so smart, so ahead of technology that he devised this scheme to have a camera planted on the catcher's signs and bang a trash can in order to relay the signs and tell the hitter what's coming in real time, then win a World Series, go to the Red Sox the very next year, and not bring any sort of sign-stealing ideas to Boston. I have a really tough time thinking that all the success that he saw in Houston in 2017, winning a World Series, saw how important it was and saw how much of an advantage the hitters got once they knew what sign was coming. So all of a sudden in 2018 say, I'm good. I'll leave what I did in Houston. I'm going to play it clean here. No cheater, no one who gains a system just stops all of a sudden out of nowhere just because they feel like it. I don't believe he stopped, and I have a hard time believing that the replay room operator acted on his own, let's say, right? Seems like a normal guy like you and me. I mean, I don't really see how, you can kind of put all the blame on him as a bad actor, let's say, or he's doing this. And not only is he doing this, he's doing it secretly to where even the players, I don't know if he's doing this. Is this legal, not legal? And having, the coaches unaware of what's going on. I have a very, very tough time believing it. But I guess the Red Sox story was enough to where he basically put all the blame on him. They had a fall guy, and now JT Watkins is the one who takes the blame. Again, I don't believe it, but that's what Rob Manfred says. What happened? Alex Cora is a clean man in Boston. Fine, whatever you want to say. But more importantly now, this is kind of all water under the bridge because it's now important at least to go forward. How can this be fixed? Because technology only is going to improve. It's only going to get easier and easier to kind of have use technology in a way that can't be detected, can't be decoded. And now at least it'll be easier to find a different way to how to relay signs to hitters or relay to them what pitch is coming. And part of this, I think, how it can be fixed is twofold. One, punch the players moving forward, like I said. Now that the schemes are understood, now that we know kind of how teams and players can use video, you need to use that information against them, be one step ahead as much as possible, and hold the players responsible. And what I would do, I said this right when everything came out, not, going forward, I think there should be severe punishments similar to what PED punishments are right now. So going forward, starting whenever the season starts, there should be a policy in place to where if a player or players are caught cheating using video somehow, do it like you do with PEDs. 50 games suspension for the first offense, 100 game suspension for the second offense, third time is lifetime ban. 3 strikes and you're out. 50 games is a significant punishment. I think you see the PED use go rapidly down once punishments were actually put in place and once MLB started cracking down on it to where now it's pretty rare and pretty shocking that players actually test positive for something. So if you put a same sort of policy in place to where cheating is not tolerated, you cheat, boom, you're going to get nailed. I think a similar 50, 100 lifetime ban suspension would be at least enough of a deterrent that players would think twice about trying to, use cameras to their advantage. And two, another thing I would do, I personally would just ban video altogether. I mean, players right now are allowed to go back to the video room, watch their at-bats previously, and kind of see how the pitcher pitched them, right? And obviously now with coaches' challenges also being in place, you have a replay operator, similar to like in football, to where you can have someone up in the booth, watch the video and say, oh, that's a close play at first base. I think he was safe. Let's challenge it. Right? Football and baseball are the two sports where you have someone upstairs watching the replay and watching a live feed. And if a coach needs to challenge it, they can relay to him that, yes, let's challenge it. I would just ban video altogether. To me, players, especially batters, do not need to have video in game. Because all this does is just lead to temptation like we saw teams get carried away with. And I do believe that the Astros and the Red Sox weren't the only two teams cheating. I think it's one of those things where almost every team in one way or another was trying to gain an edge. Maybe, and I do think that at least no team went as far as the Astros did. But there are definitely ways you can cheat, similar to what the Red Sox did, where you can kind of do it slyly or not egregiously to where, you can gain an advantage here or there. Obviously, the Astros did it for every pitch of every inning, for every game they used it. But there are ways that you can kind of game the system and at least get an advantage using technology that, sure, is breaking the rules or the lines blurry. Possibly. MLB didn't really do a great job of kind of drawing a line in the sand, let's say, and saying this is cheating, this is not cheating. So I'll just get rid of it altogether. Get rid of all the temptations, ban video altogether. Do not allow, have it like in college football, you have a sky judge, let's say, right? Every play, there's no more coaches' challenges. So you have no one in the video room kind of monitoring it. Should they challenge it? Should they not challenge it? Everything goes to review with the sky judge. They can stop play. If not, just keep on going. So no player or coaches' challenges, I should say. Do not let players access video during the games. And for me, at least, by taking this temptation away, it really hurts and limits what teams can do to get an edge. And worst case, if players push back on this too much and, they are so used to seeing video of pitches after they're at bat and want to learn it. And this is something that MLB is not comfortable taking away from them. How come we can't do it like what the NFL has, right? The NFL has tablets on the sideline to where players can come right off the field. They can see what formations the defense was in, what happened once the ball was snapped, right? They can see live video of the plays that just happened. How come we can't do that with baseball? To where, sure, players can go back, in the dugout, watch a tablet in the dugout. Do not let them go back to the video room. Just watch in the dugout. Give them tablets where they can replay the at-bat they just had, but don't allow live feeds and don't allow a camera angle that shows the catcher signs. And if we can have it in the NFL, in a league that's so paranoid, in a league that tries every single way possible to get an advantage, right? Every single team tries to get an advantage one or another. You have teams like the Patriots who really push push the edge and push the line and sometimes cross it. But you have other teams, again, that I think that try to do the same thing, but a little more under the radar. So if you're able to have teams on the sideline look at video, access what they just watched, but not use it in a way that they can gain an advantage in real time, where they're not looking at the coaches signaling in, or they don't have a camera on, the offensive coordinator talking, signaling in a play. Do that in baseball. There's no reason you can't do it. Allow players to get video, but don't allow them to have access to the catcher signs, and don't do it where they can access live video in real time. That's what I would do. This is most important, right? You can say what you want, and a lot of people are upset about Rob Manfred's punishment, or lack of punishment, I should say, for the Astros and for the Red Sox. That's, it's in the past. I, for the most part, do agree. I think granting players immunity was the right move. But now going forward, it's more important that now you know that this cheating is going on. You know that teams are using technology to their advantage and pushing the line and breaking the rules to do so. How can you make sure it doesn't happen going forward? I think either banning it altogether, taking a replay out, and taking away coaches' challenges is enough to where you can prevent teams from even having the ability to cheat, and then not alone also putting in place some harsh punishments for players and coaches who try to break the rules anyway. Because as we know, rules are meant to be broken. Teams are still trying to gain an advantage. Give them every little resource possible in order to break the rules is what I think MLB should do. So I'd love to get your thoughts. Again, I know it's a football-heavy, draft-heavy show. We'd love to get your thoughts, again, if you care about the MLB suspensions at all, and if there's a better way that you think of that I'm not thinking of, that MLB could try to limit cheating going forward. Because this really has to be the main question now. We have to move forward and say, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again and doesn't tarnish the game like it did? MLB has really done a poor job, whether it's the Black Sox in 1919 or the steroid era or now with technology, of getting out ahead of different ways that players and teams try to cheat. They've done a very poor job. They're mostly reactive, not proactive. Like these kind of ways will help you be proactive and, again, give teams less incentive to cheat. I think that's absolutely the right way to go. So I'd love to get your thoughts either on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, or on Twitter, WWSRN_radio. When we come back, I'm going to try to do a game that's very dangerous. We're going to try to predict the NFL draft. Who is the first wide receiver that's going to be taken off the board? Who is the second quarterback that's going to be taken off the board? Because we all know Joe Burrow is going to be number one. Who's going to be that second quarterback? Justin Herbert? Jordan Love as a wild card? Is Tua actually going to go second? And if Tua is not taken second, how far could he fall? We'll kind of play a little game of a few different positions where we think some interesting players would fall. And also realistic or reach. We'll fit both of those coming in next. It is the Morning Boys right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Welcome back in to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, Hour 2 of the Morning Boys show right here as we take you to the top of the hour, 11 a.m. on the East Coast. We do appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully you're having a good Thursday. We're keeping you somewhat entertained, getting you ready for the draft. That is in about from now, 10 hours from now, we have the Bengals on the clock, and we all think, and there's at least some reports that they've already told Joe Burrow that he will be the number one overall pick. Safe to assume Chase Young will go number 2 to the Redskins, and really with the Lions, we'll see what comes about with them at number 3. There's some rumors circulating now late that the Dolphins may be able to make a late push. We'll get to that in just a second, but Beth comments on Facebook, I don't understand how normal all this cheating is when we just talked about the Red Sox getting in trouble or getting, I should say, punished by Major League Baseball. And I think she brings up a good point in that's the question we don't really know about. Right? I'm under the assumption and the belief that everyone is cheating in some way or form. I think it's naive to think that, there's only 2 teams in all of Major League Baseball that are using technology to their advantage. Again, we saw the most egregious type was the Astros, for sure. I don't think any team was close to as obvious as them, because I think we would have found out about it by now. But even with the Red Sox, you heard some of the investigation and why Rob Manfred basically only punished severely their replay room operator, is that he came into the assumption that even though that the guy was decoding signs during the game illegally, which you're not supposed to do. You can decode signs before the game with video and after the game. But MLB at least has a strict rule that you're not supposed to decode signs in-game while it's happening. And he thought that, while as he was disseminating this information to where maybe in the 3rd inning, he thought, okay, the 3rd time the catcher puts down is the actual sign. That he was telling the players this, and the players, there was, an uncertainty, I guess, of whether he was saying this from the information he got before the game, or if he was disseminating it as the game was going on. And I guess that kind of blurry line is part of the reason why I think a lot of teams acted in the way they did in some sort of manner. And I think I personally think this cheating happened with most, if not all, of teams in some way or form, which is why I think it's so important for MLB going forward to implement a strict policy and just take technology away. Teams have shown you already that if you give them the ability to, they will cheat. If you give them access to live cameras, looking at the catcher's signs, and tell them, don't look at it, don't cheat. I mean, honestly, if we're in that position, how often are we not in our jobs have an opportunity to get ahead, gain an edge, let's say, whether it's a chance to earn more money, be more successful, even get a promotion, let's say, and that ability is right there in front of you. And your boss tells you, don't do it, don't use it. It's just like Adam and Eve with the apple. Don't eat the apple, it's right there, don't do it. But if you give them the option, if you don't even take away the temptation, more times than not, the temptation will win. And that's why I think MLB will be smart and wise to realize that this is prevalent throughout Major League Baseball, not to be naive to think this is only an isolated incident in Houston and Boston. Take away technology. Do not allow teams to see video during the game, only limited to before the game and after a game. Take away every single option and avenue they have for seeing live video in-game. That at least, hopefully, for Major League Baseball, clean it up and prevent teams from cheating going forward and getting an advantage. So, again, if you have any thoughts on that, Worldwide Sports Radio Network on Facebook or WWSRN Radio on Twitter. So it is NFL Draft Day. The first day, finally, a lot of speculation, a lot of buzz, a lot of rumors going on about the draft, and we have finally reached it. So we'll do a few different games here, guaranteed to be wrong, so please take it with a grain of salt. But also love your thoughts as well. This is, no one knows, right? There's so much rumor, there's so much smoke screening going on, there's so many speculation going on, that everything thrown out there, we don't really know true, false. Is this real? The team is being serious, or is this, just a way for them to kind of lure teams into doing something else or try to trick teams into drafting someone else? So we'll do realistic or reach that we did on Monday as well for a few other rumors as well. But also want to do some draft predictions because I think there's a lot of positional groups and a lot of players personally there's questions about. Who will be taken first? Where will this player land? So I think there's at least a few positions and teams that I kind of want to hit on real quick. Wide receiver group. We hear a lot about the wide receivers this year, especially the top 3, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs. We kind of hear those 3 are bunched together, and those are at least for sure the top 3 receivers that will go off the board first. But every really team, every draft analyst has a different order as to who will go off first. My thoughts, I think Henry Ruggs out of Alabama is going first, and here's why. Speed, speed, speed. We've seen plenty of teams already get kind of infatuated by players who run fast. We saw that with John Ross out of Washington a few years ago with the Bengals. He went very high in the first round, very high in the top 10, because he ran very fast. Henry Ruggs is a guy similar to John Ross without the injury issues, who runs very, very fast. Is the smallest of the 3 receivers, but he's the one who runs the fastest. Teams love speed. I think, especially now, you see the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, and you saw how important Tyreek Hill is to that offense. I think teams want a Tyreek Hill 2.0. Henry Ruggs is that guy. So whether it's the Jets, whether it's the Raiders, or whether a team like even the Broncos or the Eagles to trade up, I think Henry Ruggs will be the first receiver taken off the board because of his speed. The big question, who will be the second quarterback taken? We know Joe Burrow's going number 1 to the Bengals. Who will it be? Will it be Jordan Love out of Utah State as a major shock? Will it be Tua? I said on the show a few weeks ago, and I'll say it again. The Dolphins at number 5 should not draft Tua. I'm very afraid for the offensive line that they have in place that he will not be protected. And with an already riddled injury history, playing behind a great offensive line, he needs to go to a team with already a solid offensive line in place that at least give him a chance to stay upright. I don't see that happening with the Dolphins anytime soon. So I would, if I was them, tell them don't draft Tua, go Herbert, or even build up the offensive line if you don't like a quarterback and play next year for a quarterback. So with that said, I think the second overall quarterback going is going to be Justin Herbert, and I think it's going to be the Chargers. I'm buying these rumors, which we'll get to in a little bit here, about the Dolphins either trading up or really being interested in an offensive lineman, specifically an offensive tackle. I think it's very wise for them, and I think you see teams that take care of their offensive line first, before having a quarterback in place, before subjecting that quarterback, they take in place to some major, major hits. I think is very smart. It will save them a lot of draft equity and a lot of headaches going forward. So I think it's very wise for the Dolphins to take a tackle either at number 5 or if they trade up to number 3, take a tackle, which means I think Justin Herbert will not go to the Dolphins, meaning I think the Chargers will definitely be taking quarterback. And I think if they have the option for Herbert or Tua, I think they're going to go Herbert. So at least for me, Justin Herbert, the second quarterback taken off the board behind Joe Burrow. Another group that is very deep and a lot of, at least I should say top-heavy in terms of who scouts like, but no real definitive answer as to who's number 1, who's number 2, number 3, number 4, and that's a tackle position. And you have 4 tackles. You have Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa. You have Jedrick Wills Jr. out of Alabama. You have Andrew Thomas out of Georgia. And you have Mekhi Becton out of Louisville. All 4 are consensus top 4 that are going off the board tackle-wise. Each team, each analyst, each coach has their preference of who's number 1, who's number 4. I think the first tackle that's going to be taken is Jedrick Wills Jr. out of Alabama. I think he can either go to the Giants at number 4 or the Dolphins at number 3 if they trade up. I think this is a guy, because of the Alabama connection with Joe Judge, which, as we know, Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are very close. So when you have both Joe Judge coming from New England and you have Brian Flores coming from New England, they're very familiar with Nick Saban coach teams. And I think for that reason, in a year that there's so much unknown, right, because there's so many answers we can't get, teams can't bring players in. I think Jedrick Wills is a guy that, first of all, is a tackle that will stay a tackle. There's questions about Andrew Thomas and Tristan Wirfs. Will they be guards? Will they be tackles? I mean, is Tristan Wirfs big enough to be a tackle in the NFL? There's that question mark. I think Jedrick Wills is a guy that answers a lot of questions. He'll be a safe spot to insert at right tackle, especially if your team needs a tackle. And possibly you hear that this is a guy who could slide over to left tackle in a year or two, which is both what the Dolphins and the Giants need. So I think Jedrick Wills Jr., because of that Alabama pedigree, because both head coaches are from the New England background, which is very close to Nick Saban and out of Alabama, I think Jedrick Wills Jr. will be the first tackle taken off the board. Again, either number 3 or number 4, either the Giants or the Dolphins. First team to trade up, I think, will be the Falcons. I really do. I think they're currently right now at 16. They are desperate for a cornerback, and they're also desperate to win, right? We talked about the Buccaneers being they'll be a feisty team in the NFC South. I think the Falcons are desperate to win now. They signed Todd Gurley. They're doing whatever they can to make a playoff run. And now as you see the Buccaneers improving, especially offensively, the Falcons need to improve defensively. I think a corner does that. And I think especially if Jeffrey Okudah is not taken by the Lions at either 3 or 5 and he starts to fall, or C.J. Henderson is another guy from Florida that you hear a lot of buzz about. And especially with cornerback, there's a significant drop-off between the top 2 guys and everyone else. I think the Falcons, if they waited 16, both of those guys will be off the board. They need to be aggressive. I think they could trade up to maybe number 9. I think they'll be the first teim to trade up in the draft that can go either with the Panthers at number 7 or the Jaguars at number 9. I think the Falcons definitely the team to trade up. And we'll finish up with this. I have Justin Herbert going as a second quarterback taken to the Chargers. Where does Tua Tagovailoa land? I don't think it's in Miami. I think Miami would be wise to avoid him. Where does he land? I'm going to go wild card here. A team that already has a crowded quarterback room, but with a head coach that I feel like can't help himself if Tua does slide down and he sits there at number 12. The Raiders. I have a very tough time with John Gruden, who we all believe is desperate to move on from Derek Carr in one way or another. They brought in Marcus Mariota as a backup, so you already have 2 veteran quarterbacks in the room already. I think if Tua sits there at number 12, you have John Gruden licking his lips saying, we got to get this guy. We're going to Vegas. We need a face of the franchise. They thought it was going to be Antonio Brown. Obviously, that just went south very quickly. I think Tua, if he sits at number 12, will be scooped up by the Raiders, and I think they'll figure out what to do with either Derek Carr or Mariota. That's a question that you can figure out later. The offensive line has done a very good job of protecting the quarterback. You have John Gruden, who does a good job of getting the quarterback, having the ball come out quickly, which I think is imperative for Tua's development of keeping him healthy. I think between the offensive line, John Gruden's game plan, and more importantly, John Gruden being John Gruden, kind of seeing the flashy light and getting attracted to it, I think that he'll fall for Tua. And I think Tua, if he gets by the Dolphins at 5, if he gets by the Chargers at 6, will land in Las Vegas with the Raiders at number 12. So let's get your thoughts on any one of those. Where does Tua land? Who is going to be the second quarterback taken, first wide receiver taken? Any thoughts on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, or on Twitter, WWSRN_Twitter. So with that said, though, so we'll continue with some draft rumors and some draft predictions, realistic or reach. Now, we'll start with the latest rumor that was going on late last night and really throughout the day yesterday, was the Dolphins being interested in moving up to number 3. And moving up to number 3 to not draft Tua, to draft a tackle. And I believe that. I think this is realistic for a few reasons. One, I think the Dolphins know that if they want to draft Tua, if the Chargers don't take him, first of all, he's going to fall to at least, I would say, at least number 12. Which means they have enough draft capital they want to trade up after they get a tackle to trade back up and get Tua. So I think that they won't draft him with the first overall pick, and they realize that whether it's at number 3 or number 5, a tackle could be the smart way to go, and they can trade back up, having 3 first-round picks to reach back up and get to it if that's their guy truly. And 2, I mean, if they truly like a tackle, the Giants have basically already come out and said they're going to draft a tackle. They really haven't said which guy they like the most, but I think it's safe to assume at number 4, it'd be a shock if the Giants go Isaiah Simmons. And with that said, the Dolphins want to maybe, if they are afraid that they're going to get their guy, move up to number 3. I think it's very realistic. And not to mention, too, the Lions are desperate to move that number 3 spot. You heard the rumors yesterday that the Dolphins are trying to trade up to not only number 3, but keep their number 5 overall pick. I don't see the Lions trading back to where they agree to move from 3 to 18 because they're also, you got to forget, can't forget, they're in a position similar to that of the Falcons. Their coaches are on the hot seat. Both Bob Quinn, the general manager, and Matt Patricia, the head coach, are both basically in a win-now situation where their jobs are on the line if they don't make the playoffs. This is basically a play for bust kind of year. So the Lions can't afford to trade back too far and miss out on an impact primetime player like a Jeff Okudah or like a C.J. Henderson, or get so far back at 18 where really a lot of the defensive studs are off the board by that point. I don't think the Lions can afford to drop back that far, so I think they will, if the trade goes down, go to number 5. So I think it's very realistic that the Dolphins trade up from 3 to 5, give away a first-round pick or so, and at least secure a tackle that they want for sure. They have so much draft capital to use that they could still afford to then trade back up in the first round if they still want to, and he's sitting there. So I think very realistic the Dolphins trade up to number 3 one way or another. And this brings us to number 4. The Giants are open for business, and part of that smoke screen that Dave Gettman is trying to set out there, and I think part of the desperation that he wants to get out of that number 4 spot is saying that the Giants have looked intently and looked deeply on Oregon quarterback Justin Herbert and doing a lot of research. I think this is really trying to give teams a scare that will say, oh, wow, is he really going to draft Justin Herbert? I think that Dave Gettman is desperate to trade out of number 4, but I think it's a reach because, again, it all depends on Tua's value. For me, at least, as to the Giants being able to trade out of the number 4 spot, right? Because look, the Dolphins are desperate for a tackle, so if they're going to trade up, they're not going to trade up with the Giants, and the Giants are going to move back 1 spot. They're not going to get a lot there. So if the Dolphins jump ahead of the Giants and go to number 3 for a tackle, what team is jumping the Giants or jumping the Lions, I should say, because now teams are aware. If they want Tua, if Tua is their guy, the Lions at number 5 aren't drafting a quarterback. The Giants at number 4 aren't drafting a quarterback. The team you got to get in front of is the Chargers, and you could spend less draft capital at number 5 than you could at number 4. I think it's a reach to say that the Giants could trade their number 4 draft pick because I just don't think there's enough need there. There's not enough want for teams to jump up. The Falcons, you heard rumors that they try to go all the way up to number 2. I don't think, obviously that's not going to happen. I would be shocked if the Redskins trade at number 2. But by that point, there's really no value for them to trade up to number 4 because the 2 or 3 guys they want will be gone by that point. So I think there's just not enough, if it's a supply and demand, there's not enough demand to be in the top 4 or top 5. So I think it's a reach for the Giants to trade out number 4. I think they'll try their best, but it's smart for the Giants to sit at number 4, draft a tackle, and just don't trade back for the sake of trading back because they won't get a haul. I personally don't think if they do end up trading back. And the 49ers coming out the other day saying they were open to trading at least one first-round pick, maybe both. 100% realistic, and here's why. They have 7 picks in the draft, only 2 in the first round. Oh, I'm sorry, they have 2 in the first round. Not only, they have 2, which is impressive. But then they don't draft again until the 5th round. So they go 2 in the first round, nothing to the 5th. That's a huge gap in that 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round. You can get a lot of contributors and starters. In that time, I think John Lynch, the general manager of the 49ers, he's in a unique spot, and he really needs a few guys for depth that could come in and be some playmakers and impact players, especially on the offensive side. There's enough wide receivers you can get a good impact playmaker in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round. I think it's very smart and realistic that the 49ers trade at least one, maybe both, first-round picks in order to accumulate mid-round picks and get a few 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round picks so they're not basically sitting there from the 1st round to the 5th round with just twiddling their thumbs and watching a lot of their great guys go, for sure. And especially if a guy like Tua falls, right? And let's say the Raiders don't take him at number 12. The 49ers could be a prime spot for a team. Maybe the Dolphins, they want to trade back up. Maybe the Patriots, they want to trade up. There's a spot right there at 13 where a team that wants Tua, that doesn't want to risk him falling any further, could trade up to and get. I think the 49ers definitely will and are open for business of trading at least one, maybe both. And finally, the Jets trading Jamal Adams. And this is just a reach and more of just a contract ploy by Jamal. You heard Joe Douglas say, he's doing his job by listening to all these trade offers. This is now the 2nd year in a row that Jamal Adams has been rumored to be on the trade block. Obviously, last season at the trade deadline, the Jets were rumored to possibly trade Jamal Adams. To me, this is just more of just Jamal trying to get paid more than anything else. He's not going to be going to virtual OTAs, which I don't know how much leverage that will hold, or if that's actually a big deal or not. But he's 25. He's a core guy. He's a leader of this team. The Jets would be absolutely silly to trade him. I think that they have a competent regime now with Joe Douglas taking over as general manager. I don't think he would trade him. I think that's very much a reach for teams in the market for safety. I just don't think they'll get the value back that they want. You already had the Cowboys as a team who needs a safety come out and say, we're not going to trade number 17 for it. We're not going to do it. So I think, that might have been their best shot to get a significant draft pick or two. But I think it's more just a reach of maybe Jamal Adams trying to just get more money. And maybe even Joe Douglas trying to get more leverage back by saying, I'm doing my job by listening to these offers, but I think it's very much a reach. I'll be shocked. If Jamal Adams is either traded during the draft or if he's not in a Jets uniform at the start of the 2020 season, whenever that is. So let's get your thoughts. I mean, these are just a few of the draft rumors we're flushing out here. There's stuff being thrown against the wall basically all day and all night by these teams, again, trying to gain some leverage, trying to create a smoke screen and not allow teams to actually know what they're doing. So a lot of rumors out there. I'd love to, get your thoughts. Do you think one is true, one is fake? We'll get to that. And any of those draft predictions we had. First wide receiver taken, second quarterback taken, first tackle taken. There's a lot of, different, I think, position groups that are interesting to see what happens. Any of your thoughts, either on Facebook, again, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, or on Twitter, WWSRN_radio. We'll read that. And when we come back, NFL draft needs. We have 2 teams left in the NFC South, and we have all of the NFC West to get to. We'll do that before we get to Tom DiBendetto of TDScouting.com at 10:40 to give us and prep us for the NFL draft. So all that coming up on the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
We are back here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Do appreciate you tuning in on NFL Draft Day. We finally have some real-life sports to talk about and get to. So a very exciting time. Finally something to kind of hold on to, grab onto, and at least watch where the outcome is unknown. We know there's a lot of chaos, a lot of teams kind of panic, let's say, or make some interesting decisions. Well, we're all here for that for sure, and hopefully there's a lot of chaos more than ever. That would be a real benefit to all of us watching. And again, just having something to watch that we don't know the outcome of, and just watching something real is very nice for sure. So the NFL draft is very, very much welcomed. And with that, we'll have Tom DiBendetto again of TDScouting.com. Just a great draft mind. Be here about 15 minutes or so, end the show and take us off into and get us, really prepped finally as a few hours away from the draft goes on. But before that, you still have one last edition of NFL Draft Needs to get to. We have the Buccaneers, we have the Panthers, and all the NFC West. So we'll run through them very quickly. Panthers, like we talked about, 8 picks, 3 in the top 70. I do think they could be a really scrappy team this year, a tough out, similar to what the Cardinals were last year. I mean, defense-wise, they need help at all 3 levels. They need help at defensive line getting an edge rush. They need help at linebacker. They need help at secondary, at safety. Really, this could be a spot where they just take the best player available whenever they're up, because I think that definitely will help quickly rebuild. Whether it's an Isaiah Simmons, if he falls to them, whether it's a Jeffrey Okuda or a C.J. Henderson, they could use really, again, the best player defensively, whoever falls to them at all three different levels. And also, too, really they need help on the offensive line. They trade away Trey Turner, which is a huge loss. I mean, he was great on the interior. They need help at guard now. And, two, Teddy Bridgewater and whoever you bring in as your franchise guy in a year, a 2 year, or 3 years. I know and believes Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the face of the franchise for the Panthers for the next 5 or 10 years. So they need to start building the offensive line now to him whenever they get that quarterback. If they draft him this year and get him for next year, or vice versa, in a year, get him for 2 years. You need to have an offensive line in place and set so they can protect him and give him a chance to have success. So I would say defense, all three levels, and offensive line for sure is what the Panthers need to focus on. The Buccaneers, 7 picks. Obviously, their draft has changed significantly since they acquired Tom Brady. They traded for Rob Gronkowski. Actually, I really should change that. That's 6 picks now. Oh, no, 7 picks. I apologize. They got a 7th-round draft pick back. As you can see, I did not update this when I did it a few days ago. But they do have 7 picks. Offensive tackle is a main priority for this team, especially with the way Bruce Arians likes to air the ball out deep, which means longer routes, which means bigger dropbacks and longer time Tom Brady has the ball in his hands. Tom Brady loves to get the ball out quick, throw underneath routes, short routes, and just have his players run, have his receivers run the ball once they get it. It's going to be a little bit different this year. We'll see how much, that is blended in with the deep ball. But offensive tackle, you need to give Tom Brady a chance. If he's going to drop back and throw some of these deep routes, you need to give him time. You need to give him protection. He's 43. He's not mobile. And now you're having him run plays that he's not familiar to running. So get an offensive tackle. You have Donovan Smith on the left side, who's okay. He's pretty solid, a Penn State guy. Got to throw that out there. Shout out Donovan Smith. A right tackle's a question mark, and you can use some depth behind Donovan Smith as well. And not to mention, if his contract runs out after next year, you're going to pay him a left tackle, money to protect Brady's blind side. Maybe you can get a guy in the wings now, a project offensive tackle later on in the draft, and develop him to be the guy moving forward. And running back, I mean, this to me, running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire just is almost too perfect at LSU, right? If you saw LSU's run this year, unfamiliar with him, he is basically, if Tom Brady could make a running back in a lab, it is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He is small. He is tough to bring down. He's tough through the tackles. But more importantly, he catches the ball to backfield great. He has great hands, and he's impossible to take down. He's so slippery. I think it's the best word to describe him. You can jump it off to him. You think we have him corralled for a 2 or 3 yard gain. He hits that and turns that into a 5 or 6 yard gain, or even further. He breaks even further. Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be a perfect fit down in Tampa Bay. He'd be ultimate weapon for Tom Brady. And again, a guy that's so hard to take down and corral, whether it's running through the tackles or out on the edge on a dump-off pass or running out routes, he is absolutely perfect for Tom Brady wants. I think he'd be great for the Buccaneers if they can scoop him up before he goes high. I mean, more than the second round, you think he can go pretty high there. So we'll see if the Buccaneers can make a move to get him and secure his services, which would be just a perfect complement for Tom Brady and what he wants in a running back. We'll go to the Rams. No first-round pick. 2 second-rounders for them as they have 7 picks. Wide receiver, their main need. They traded away Brandon Cooks. They don't have a number 1 wide receiver. I like Robert Woods. I like Cooper Kupp. They're nice compliments. They're not, I would say, number 1 bona fide receivers. Especially, so get that. There's plenty of these big wide receivers to say in this draft. Pick up one of them and help Jared Goff. Give a big target to throw to. Linebacker, they really were depleted this free agency. They lost Corey Littleton. They lost Dante Fowler Jr. They need help both on the edge and middle linebacker. Really all 3 positions that they need help for. And most also, too, you look at the division they're in the NFC West. You have the 49ers, you have the Seahawks, who love to ground and pound. They love to line up and punch in the mouth with the run game. The Rams need to beef up that middle linebacker position in order to suffocate the run game and stop it. Because as we saw, especially with the 49ers, if they can run the ball on you, they won't stop. Ask the Green Bay Packers in the NFC title game. They kept running and running and running. The Rams need some help at linebacker to kind of shore up that position and prevent the run games of those 2 teams from running off wild. And running back. They cut Todd Gurley, which is a huge loss. But when they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, they were the number 1 rushing team in DVOA, which is efficiency, which means they were the most efficient team in the NFL in 2018 at running the ball. And they had the 3rd best yards per carry in the NFL that year. The offense is founded upon and started with establishing the run, Play action works great for Jared Goff. We saw that's when he's at his best. When teams are committing to stopping the run, that opens up a lot of passing lanes for Jared Goff. We saw when there's no threat of the run, he struggles. Last year, after being the number 1 rushing team in 2018 in rushing efficiency, the Rams last year were 20th. And we saw what happened. Their offense struggled. Jared Goff looked lost at times, and they missed the playoffs. You need a replacement for Todd Gurley. You need a number 1 for Todd Gurley. You can get that in the second round. So definitely running back is a key position for them on top of wide receiver. Let's move over to the Seahawks. 7 picks, 1 in the first round, 2 in the second round. So they have 3 heavy, high picks, let's say, to get some impact players. They needed some edge rush, right? They needed not only to find a replacement for Jadeveon Clowney, but also Jadeveon Clowney is not a guy that really makes his bones by getting after the quarterback. He is great in run support, but he's not an edge rusher that's going to get you 10, 12, 15 sacks a year. They need help in the edge rush. I think that should be definitely a main priority for them. Running back as well. I think they could definitely absolutely benefit from getting a running back. The position last year was very banged up. We saw Chris Carson go down. We saw Rashad Penny go down. I mean, basically, they limped it to the playoffs with no healthy running backs at all and really relied on practice squad players to help run the ball. So they need a healthy, reliable, consistent back. I like Chris Carson. He'll be back next year. But get someone to complement him, to have some security and insurance in case Chris Carson or Rashad Penny again go down this year with injuries. The run game is so important to what Seattle does. I think it doesn't hurt to at least beef up that position and get a young running back in there. And I think wide receiver too. You have Tyler Lockett as a great deep threat. DK Metcalf had a pretty solid rookie year. He's another big body, but I think to add some depth there and at least give Russell Wilson another player to throw to is. I ran out of the bed again. We'll just let the college football bed run. Who cares? These are college players that are coming out. But get a wide receiver for sure for the Seahawks. The 49ers, 7 picks, like I said, 2 in the first round, none until the 5th. They need a wide receiver. They need a bona fide number 1 target. They lost Emmanuel Sanders, who never really was a number 1, but they never had one to begin with. Give Jimmy G a number 1 guy to throw to. Help that offense evolve and become more dangerous. Offensive line, I think this is a great depth pick. Joe Staley is getting older. Their left tackle. You have Weston Richburg, who is their center, coming off a season-end injury. So, it's not a young offensive line, and there's some question marks about players coming back after injury. Get some offensive line depth to help. And I would say this applies also to corner. Richard Sherman's not getting any younger. They have a great, great front 7. A lot of young players, both a linebacker and defensive line. This is a good chance. Get a corner. Shore up the secondary, especially now when corners, you're playing basically with 3 corners on the field at all times. So you can never have enough secondary help. Continue to add to that. I think a corner would be smart for the 49ers because they really mostly need depth for the most part through all their positions. They're pretty loaded roster-wise. And we'll finish up finally with the Cardinals. 6 picks, 2 important positions they have, and they can address them, especially they have the number 8 pick right now. Either one they can address with this pick. Offensive tackle. And definitely need an offensive tackle to help. They were 26th in pass blocking last year, 22nd in run blocking. And that's with efficiency. So that really shows you they're behind the 8 ball. You have Kyler Murray back there who has done a good job of avoiding big hits, but still he's small in stature. And despite him being mobile, you want to give him a chance at least to sit back in the pocket and make some throws because he's a great arm. Get an offensive tackle, help protect your quarterback, and get some edge rush, right? You want to protect your quarterback, and you want to have guys that can get after the quarterback. They have Chandler Jones, who had a great year. Like I said, he's been great in Arizona since being traded over there from the Patriots. Get an interior rush guy, get some interior and edge depth to be addressed, and there's plenty of draft capital. They have 6 picks. Get some so now we have NBC on the NBA theme going on, so we'll turn the music off. As you see, I talked too long. The bed run out. That's really my cue to wrap it up here. But for the Cardinals, defensive line and offensive tackle for sure. So that'll do it for all of the draft needs. We went through it. All 32 teams gave you their draft needs, what they should be looking for. So hopefully you took one thing away. Of all the 32 teams, try to give at least 3 positions for each. If you took one thing out of it, so 32 times 3, it's about just under 100. Took one out of 100 things we said. That will definitely be a win for sure, and hopefully help you be a little smarter once the NFL draft comes the next 3 days and you're watching. You say, oh, yeah, I remember, that Ryan Hickey guy I talked about. They needed that position. Look at that. They got that position. We'll see. I mean, I'm mostly wrong, so you can only take my advice with a grain of salt. But if you have any thoughts, Worldwide Sports Radio Network on Facebook, WWSRN_radio on Twitter. What's your excitement for the draft level? Any player that you see you want your team to make? I know some people, or most fans, I should say, not some, most fans fall in love with a draft prospect or a draft position, they absolutely need to take this. And most of the time, or sometimes teams do not do that. I know there's a lot of head-scratching moves out there for sure, but there's one player that your team can't miss on. Player or position group. We'll get to that, and we'll finish off the show when we come back. Tom DiBendetto, tdscouting.com is great draft resource between now, and not just now in the draft, right? Because obviously the draft is this weekend, so a lot of the scouting reports or mock drafts, you can maybe not pay attention to them after the draft is over, but Tom does a great job of not only profiling these players and giving you his thoughts, but also ranking them as well. So it's useful not just for the draft these next 3 days, also going forward. So if your team does draft a player that I haven't heard much about him, you can go to tdscouting.com, read about what Tom has, because he does a lot of research on not just the quarterbacks or the big time players or the sexy players, right? He does a lot of research on all these different draft prospects out there. So we get Tom's thoughts on who he thinks, where he ranks some of the quarterbacks, where he ranks some of the wide receivers. Can we see any shocking developments going on with either trades or some players that he likes that are being slept upon? So we'll get all of Tom's thoughts. We wrap up with the Morning Boys, Ryan Hickey, right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
And welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It is finally draft day after months of speculation. Canceled draft days, canceled pro days, a lot of complaining about general managers. It is finally here. No better person to end the show with, get us into the draft spirit, and kind of break down some last-minute questions here than Tom DiBendetto, not only my coworker at CBS Sports Radio, the producer and creator of tdscouting.com. You can follow Tom and all his great draft stuff at producer_Tom on Twitter. Tom, this is, first of all, such a different experience to have you on as a guest when we're so used to booking guests ourselves. So thanks for giving us a few minutes, especially on a busy draft day. How's it going?
It's going great, and this is wonderful. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I mean, you said it. This has been kind of just because of what the world's been going through. It seems like maybe the longest, most excruciating pre-draft process yet. So yes, let's get to the actual thing, please.
I know. That's the only thing I hate about the draft is so much speculation. Like I said, especially now more than ever because there's really not much else going on. So all we can focus on is the draft. I just feel like there's so much questions, so much rumors. So just get right into it. What I'm curious about too, because we'll get a lot in the quarterback and receivers here, but tackle-wise, I'm curious your thoughts because there's 4 main tackles that everyone is a consensus. These are the top 4. There's different order between coaches, analysts, GMs, like what their order is, but Tristan Wirfs, Jedrick Wills, Andrew Thomas, Mekhi Becton. Those are the consensus 4 that will be the first 4 off the board, and first 4 maybe in the top 10 or top 12. But I'm curious, what's the drop-off between those 4 and the rest of the tackle position? Because there's still, tackles being drafted. You have, I believe, 2 mocked, also going in later towards the end of the first round. But what's the drop-off talent-wise between these 4 and the rest of the tackles going in the draft?
It's actually not that big. I love this question because it's a fascinating thing to look at for the end of the first round tonight. So those 4 guys that you named, Wills, Wirfs, Becton, and Thomas, are my 4 first-round grades. But right behind them is Austin Jackson out of USC, Josh Jones out of Houston, Isaiah Wilson, the right tackle at Georgia, and then Ezra Cleveland from Boise State. And all of those guys have been popping up in the late first round on different mocks. So I do think that there's a class A with those top 4, but then I think there's a next 4 that is like solidly second round players that could be reachable in the back end of the first round. And it's a big question that I kept bringing up on the Zach Elb Show on CBS Sports Radio is what is it worth? What is a potential starting tackle worth? What pick is it worth? And I think that's the reason why a lot of these late first round mocks, like for example, the Dolphins pick at 26, their late first round pick, are they going to get a player like Austin Jackson or Josh Jones if they take a quarterback in the top 5 to try to get a starting tackle with their quarterback? So I think any pick in the first round is really within the reasonable range. If you're a GM who thinks, they have a first round grade on a player like Josh Jones out of Houston, and it's worth it to take a gamble on a player, especially the only reason why you maybe wouldn't is because the class is deep. So there are other options too. I mean, there's like guys like Lucas Nyang out of TCU, Prince Tega Winogo out of Auburn. There are so many tackles in this class. Matt Pert out of UConn is a guy a lot of people like. So there's enough tackles, potential starting level tackles in this class that I think maybe a couple GMs might try to play it a little smart and wait, but there are probably 6 of them going to go in the first round.
Okay, so you're saying, so obviously tackle is probably the third most important position we could say behind quarterback and edge rusher, right? So obviously teams aren't reaching, let's say, or really taking a huge gamble if those first 4 go and they sit in the end of the first round, or even maybe trade up to the end of the first round to get a tackle. You're saying there's not that much drop off between the top 4 that everyone's been talking about and let's say maybe the next 2 or 3 behind them.
It's tough. It's tough to say. I mean, I really, really like the top 4, and I like them a lot more than the next guys, which is why I only had 4 first-round grades. So I understand what you're saying, and I think that there are a lot of GMs that are going to agree and kind of have their board that way, where players maybe like Josh Jones could even be inside the top 4 on a couple people's boards today. So so sure, it's not a dramatic enough gap. Let's put it this way: that once those first 4 are gone, there's now like a 2-round wait for the next tackle.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And we're talking with Tom DiBendetto, tdscouting.com. Tom, especially you love the quarterback position. You do a lot of research on that QB position. I'm curious because there's really 2 guys, obviously, that we're going to mostly talk about. Joe Burrow, we think is going to go, or we basically know he's going to Cincinnati. Tua, this is my question about Tua. How concerned are you about his medicals? Because you in your mock draft, you had him going to number 5 at the Dolphins. So the Dolphins, in your mind, aren't scared of his medicals. How much of that is a hindrance towards where he could go draft-wise?
I have no idea how the Dolphins feel right now, and I know they've been trying to misdirect like crazy, so I'm not sure. I just kind of think that in the end, common sense will prevail just because they've been targeting this guy for so long now, that they opportunity to actually get their hands on him. If he's actually there and there's no crazy trade up in front of them, I think they'll actually pull the trigger. Yeah, the medicals are concerning. And it's not just the hips. A lot of people are caught up in this whole, like, aren't you listening to the doctors that he's cleared, his hip is fine, which we don't know that for sure either, especially in this strange year. But the real problem is that he was constantly an injury question his entire career. I mean, he was always – that was the number one thing we were talking about, Tua, the whole way through it at Alabama. And my problem with it, too, some players can go out there and play banged up. You can barely tell them whatever. It's just a bunch of talk. Tua's play drops off when he's not healthy. And that's kind of the thing about Tua. When he's well protected in a clean pocket, has time, and, his receivers are running wide open constantly because he played with just outrageously good receivers, this dude's surgical. He will pick you apart. We saw it happen over and over again, and he's got this weird twitchiness at quarterback, so the ball just slingshots out. You give him time, he will kill you. You protect him and you keep him healthy. He has franchise quarterback potential. There's no doubt about it, and we've all seen it. We've all seen it in big games. But availability is one of the most important traits for a NFL quarterback. And, if you're thinking about the next 8 years, even just the next 5 years, how many games is Tua really going to be at 100% ready to go, or even 90% or better healthy for? I think that is the concern with spending a top 5, top 10 pick on him. I think it's completely valid. The issue is passing on a potential franchise player, and it's something that's going to be a real tough call for both the Dolphins and the Chargers because they both need this guy. But it is a risk, and you go down the wrong road with an injury-prone quarterback, it could be a years-long detour for the whole franchise.
I couldn't agree with Tom. I'm with you 100%. I've said on the show, I wouldn't, if I was the Dolphins, I wouldn't draft him. I think it's too risky, especially with their offensive line not being great at all. And like you said, I believe his hip is 100%. That's not the concern for me. I'm totally with you. It's the multitude and the compilation of all the injuries that he's had throughout his career. He started for 2 years. Think about that. And he had all these injuries. He was playing banged up, 2 ankle surgeries. It's just, and he played behind a great offensive line, like you said, great supporting cast around him, and he still couldn't stay healthy.
I was going back and watching the SEC Championship game from 2 years ago, and that's the time that it really fully spooked me. I actually went back and watched that game after I watched all the rest of the Tua games from this year, and then I was kind of working backwards through the season last year. And so you watch this game, and I like Jake Fromm, fine, but I don't. Yeah, he got a second-round grade from me because I think he's a very solid backup. Like I think he's gonna be an NFL backup, and that has value. And there's possible potential for him to be a starter, but I really don't think it's there. He made some really nice throws, and actually on film in this class, he made the second highest number of dime level, quote unquote throws in this whole class after Burrow. So there's something there with Fromm. But just to see Fromm outplay Tua in the SEC Championship game, and then Tua not be able to finish the game because of injury, and then Hurts come in and bail out Alabama. It was like, wow, I forgot that all that happened like that, and that does not make me feel comfortable. How many times is it going to happen in his NFL career where even if we think he's mostly healthy going into the game, how many times is he not going to finish the game? So I think it's too legitimate a question to be like, it's unfair. People are just slandering Tua. It's way more complicated than that. And again, especially if you're talking about pick number 5 or 6 overall.
Talking about Tom DiBendetto, tdscouting.com. I highly suggest you check it out. And on Twitter to get all his draft nuggets and scouting at @producer_Tom. So, Tom, I'm curious. I'm with you. So let's just say the Dolphins heed your advice. They're too worried. They don't draft him. Same with the Chargers. How far do you think he could fall? Because now you look at the team. There's not exactly a clear landing spot. How far do you think he could go if he makes it past 6?
It's my favorite question of the whole draft. Although I don't want to see this happen until I think he's such an obvious candidate for a fall, and then where will the fall end? Yeah. So I don't think the Panthers would do it at 7. It's possible the Jags are the spot at 9. I don't know. We don't know what Mike Mayock might feel about Tua. I don't think it's going to happen for the Raiders. But it is also possible for the Cowboys if he actually falls to 17. And I just read a report that Jerry Jones is drafting Home Alone and, thus can't be stopped, which I don't believe.
Oh, no.
Because that's
really?
Absolutely crazy if that's happening. But if that's happening, I mean, you can so easily envision a scenario where he's frustrated with this ridiculously drawn-out negotiation with Dak. Tua is the biggest story of the draft night, falls to them, and now he is on the clock. Tua's available. I mean, 1 + 1. Oh. We know he wanted Manziel.
I was just going to say.
No problem with short college superstar quarterbacks. So I don't think that's out of the question either. And then if he gets past, 17, it's going to be devastatingly sad. And I really don't know what happens after that. But the most obvious idea is the New England Patriots at 23. And there is just a whole sea of AFC East fans and AFC fans and football fans who do not want to deal with Tua and the Patriots. So
that would just be absolutely incredible. And speaking of which, AFC, you're a Jets guy. Jets need a receiver or an offensive line. So you have to similar to the tackles, right? We have, I think, 3 consensus guys in the top that'll go first: Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy. You have Ruggs, Lamb, and Jeudy ranked in that order. What is it with Henry Ruggs that stands out the most that you make him the best receiver in this class?
I just love him as a football player. It's almost hard to explain. First of all, he's 4.28 40 speed. So, it's like mind-blowing speed. And we're not talking about a guy from a school that wasn't all that productive, that he just was a good combine burner and he has, he looks good working out. We're talking about a dude who we watched play in the biggest games. He loves contested catches too. He loves going up and fighting for the ball. He loves to block. He is absolutely insane. He has all these weird plays on tape, like after interceptions and turnovers, where he's hustling back to make defensive plays. He plays on special teams, and he's just a huge home run threat. So my comp for him is kind of Tyreek Hill. I'm not sure that he's ever going to be like a traditional number one wide receiver, Henry Ruggs. But if you could get a Tyreek Hill type of talent on your team, then, at least the way I think about football, you pull the trigger and you do that, and you don't worry about other – CeeDee Lamb, I think, is also going to be an absolute superstar. Jerry Jeudy is when we start getting into, fit being more important. I think he's a Calvin Ridley type of player. He comes out of the same tradition at that position at Alabama, and I think Ridley had the advantage of landing with a team with a real number 1 receiver opposite him and could kind of just, fit into a role and not have a ton of attention right away. Whereas if Jeudy comes to a place like the Jets and he's really the only option on the offense, he goes from going, being a part of maybe the best receiving core in the history of college football to being on a terrible offense where all the attention's on him. That's where we start being like, I don't know. I haven't seen it. I can't tell you confidently that he's going to be a star anyway. And then the drop off there's levels, but this class is so deep because then you got Justin Jefferson, who I love. Complicated player because he moved inside to the slot to explode with Joe Burrow and Joe Brady. So there's a bunch of changes from 2 years ago to this past season that it's hard to tell how much of them are his development, but he's a great player. T. Higgins is a player that I personally love at Clemson and gave a first round grade. Then everyone's been talking about Denzel Mims. Jalen Reagor from TCU is another personal favorite of mine. All the way back, I mean, I know you know all about KJ Hamler. I have KJ Hamler as my number 10 wide receiver in this class. So I think if you know anything about KJ Hamler, that
Love
says a
KJ.
lot about how.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
That says a lot about how deep this class is, because that guy could end up being a star. He really could. So I think the drop-off for me with the whole class starts happening a couple guys later in the 16, 17, 18 range. But this class is legitimately like 18 players deep of top 3-round talents. And it's going to be fascinating to see how many go in round one, who picks the first one, how many go in round one, and then how many end up getting taken in the first 3 rounds.
Think about it. You said almost 18 guys that are like top 3 that could be real stars and real contributors. It's the depth of wide receiver is something like we may never see again in terms of any position depth, to have that much stardom so deep in the draft. Tom, I think by far the biggest scouting report I read on tdscouting.com that stood out to me was yours on Justin Herbert. Because I feel like Herbert's an interesting guy. I personally feel like more teams like Herbert than actually like fans, and especially on Twitter. I feel like there's no one that really likes Justin Herbert a lot on Twitter.
Yeah.
And your comparisons blew my mind. So you compared him to the likes of Mitchell Trubisky, Blake Bortles, Josh Allen, and Carson Wentz. Obviously, 4 way different levels of bust to 6. I mean, you almost had MVP with Carson Wentz if he didn't get hurt. So there's so much, in between there with his ceiling and where he could go. Why is it with him that there's so much variance on his potential and like really how far he could actually grow as a quarterback?
So when I talked before about dime level throws on film, he actually had the fewest of the top 7. So he has an explosive arm. He's 6'6". He's a fluid athlete. He can even run all over the place. He's got all the tools. We just have not seen him put them all together yet. And the reason why that's an actual concern is because he went back for his senior year. He started 4 years at Oregon. I mean, so when you got a guy at a program like that, especially that ends with Pac-12 championship success and Rose Bowl success. And remember, he played for 3 different head coaches at Oregon. He was at Oregon at a really turbulent, terrible time for the program. And it ends on this huge high, but it's not because he put it all together as a passer, not at all. If you remember the big key of the Pac-12 championship game and then the Rose Bowl, it's Justin Herbert running all over the place, which is why Bortles comp sneaks in there. I think he's a better player than Bortles, but it's just the same thing of like, if you need in the highest pressure moments to default, especially after 4 years at a program, to default back to run first, that's not an NFL quarterback trait. So he has a lot of development left, even though he has a lot of experience, and that's what's concerning to me. And then there's just there's just a lack of anticipation. He didn't really play. It's like the opposite of Joe Burrow's offense. He didn't really play in an offense that forced him to make a lot of full field reads and attack downfield off of those reads with any kind of anticipation. So again, there's a lot of new that has to be taught to this dude, a lot of adjustment to the NFL style of quarterbacking. And, it's a tough call for a team like the Chargers at 6 and the Dolphins at 5, because I don't think the upside ultimately, if everything comes together, is probably higher than Tua. But the reasonable upside, what we can reasonably expect based on what we've seen already, is that Tua has a higher upside, but is just injury riskier. So you're going to pick that, or you're going to pick the safer guy, which Herbert is safer, but you got a lot of work to do. You got a lot more work to do.
Yeah, to have the risk of drafting the next Mitchell Trubisky or Blake Bortles can make, especially Charger fans, the 3 of them out there roll in their graves for sure. That's a tough one. We have 2 more here quickly here, Tom. You have Jordan Love going 20 to the Jaguars. Is he a lock first-round pick at this point?
I'm not sure. I didn't put a first-round grade on him. And so the guy I hemmed and hawed on last year on the borderline of the first-round grade was Daniel Jones. I didn't give him a first-round grade either, and then, of course,
interesting.
6 overall.
Okay.
So I think he's one of those guys. If somebody's in love, he could go in the top 10, no pun intended. Or it wouldn't be absolutely crazy if he fell out of the first round. Just here's the reason why. It's because he needs time. So there's so much potential there, but he needs even more time than Herbert. He probably needs the Mahomes treatment of at least 1 full year of not touching the field. So he fits in places like New Orleans, maybe, or places where he'll actually have that kind of time. But I think those situations are limited, and especially in the first round, you're trying to take a guy, a lot of cases, if you're a bad team without a quarterback who's going to play sooner rather than later. And I think that might be the thing that drops him out of the first round. But I fully expect him to go. I just had a hard time. I ended up chucking him to the Jags in my mock.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really believe late in the first round. I don't know where the spot is. I put him 20th to the Jags with their second pick. I don't know where the spot exactly is for him to go in the first
Yeah, he's definitely a wild card for sure. Like you said, you see almost so much, sort of like with Herbert, so much variance where you could go, a third round, first round. Even you hear scouts talking about they gave him a third round grade, or they were very scared. Like I say, he's just one of those polarizing prospects that there's so much good, but also so much question marks as well. And we'll finish off with this, Tom. Especially now, like we said, there's so, especially with nothing going on, there's so much focus and intensity with the draft. Is there a player that you're slipping on that you see a lot of draft analysts and teams not really talking about, or even vice versa? Maybe there's a player that everyone is sold on, everyone's raving about, that you just see it and you don't say, I'm not sold on that guy.
I love Marlon Davidson from Auburn. I think he's a first-round player, and he's going to be such a good pro. It's not that he's just not a very buzzy guy, and there's a lot of mocks that leave him out of the first round. I'm not quite as high on CJ Henderson from Florida, and I'm a Gator fan as everybody else. And I think he might sneak into the top 10 picks. He might be the Jaguars' pick at number 9. I just think there's consistency and effort and hard issues, and it's harsh to say because I actually like the guy, but I did not watch him this season at Florida and think he was going to end up being a top 10 pick. First rounder, sure, but not top 10. And then let me see if there's one more I can give you real quickly. I mean, it's just fascinating. The wide receivers, I love Jalen Reagor, but it's fascinating which of those fringe end of first round, early second round guys are going to be favored. We haven't talked about guys like Michael Pittman. There are just so many. I really like Michael Pittman, but Jalen Reagor I think is my favorite one of the late first round, early second round guys out of TCU. What an unbelievably exciting player to watch on tape.
There it is, Tom DiBendetto, producer_Tom on Twitter. And more importantly, TDScouting.com. I highly suggest this weekend, next weekend, because Tom does a lot of great scouting reports, especially on the quarterbacks. If you're a team, Dolphins, the Chargers, maybe the Jaguars, whoever wants to draft a quarterback, Tom does a great job laying it all out. Strengths, weaknesses, rating them all. Tom does a great job. Tom, we do appreciate you, too, especially on a busy day, draft day. It's finally here. All that work is paid off. We do appreciate you giving us a few minutes and enjoy it. You sound miserable. Hopefully you enjoy the draft tonight. All that work was worth it.
I'm so pumped. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me on, bud.
Tom DiBendetto, again, TDScouting.com, a great resource for you out there. So that will do it for the show. We do appreciate you tuning in. Great Thursday show, because guess what? We finally have the draft here. So enjoy some live sporting events, some unnecessary or some unknown drama, I should say. Hopefully we'll have a few fireworks go off. We'll be back on Monday. Enjoy the weekend. We'll break down all the draft and more. Have a great, safe, and sane weekend. We'll talk to you Monday right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.